You're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Welcome back, everyone. You are here on the Eatfluencer Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Landes, and I am the diet culture disrupting doctor. I'm a physician and public health nutritionist by profession, but my mission now is to get the message out into the world that diet culture is optional, that weight and health are not synonyms, and that you can leave a far more impactful, meaningful, and healthy life when you leave behind the confines of diet culture. That's what this podcast is here to do, is to both, make an awareness of where we are and, empower you with some strategies of how we can move forward, because our culture is just steeped in this lens of dieting, and particularly for women, this message of smallness. And I'm here to undo that. I'm glad you are here with me today, and welcome back if you're a regular listener. We are on episode 35 today, called I Stopped Dieting, Now I'm Overeating, Help. And I am going to get into that in one moment. First, I would like to just give you a simple ask. If you are enjoying this podcast, either this episode or previous episodes, please take a moment. It will take you less than 10 seconds to get on your podcast platform right when you're done listening. Leave me a rating or a review. This helps so much with ranking and the algorithm in the podcast search engine, and helps this message get into the ears of more and more and more people, which is really my goal. So that is how you can help me. I really appreciate if you consider doing that. Let's get into our episode. So today we're talking about this period of time when you decide that you're going to stop dieting. You're going to decide to abandon some of that restriction and the rules that you have subscribed to for so long. And then you feel out of control. Then you find yourself eating past fullness, or, what some would call overeating. We're talking about the honeymoon. This has a term. This is so normal and so common that those of us that work in the anti-diet space and help people transform from a life of dieting to a life of intuitive eating, we're so familiar with this, we gave it a term, a name. And I did not make up the name, but I think honeymoon is a good as any term to encapsulate this transitional period. I have to emphasize this is a process. When you have been dieting, participating in diet culture for years and decades, it's not magic. You don't flip a switch, read the intuitive eating book, listen to a podcast, follow a few Instagram accounts, and then boom, you're like an intuitive eater. It doesn't work like that. It's a process. There are steps in the process that really are mandatory to get through in order to get to the other side. There are no workarounds for this. So what we're talking about today is this first part of the transformation, this initial window of time when you stop sort of subscribing to these perfect diety ways of eating, but you feel a little lost. It can be very scary, anxiety-provoking, even fearful. I would even go so far to say some people start panicking. And if we don't talk about this and normalize the experience of going through this period of time, this honeymoon period, the reflex default response is going to be to do another diet, because that's what we've always done. That's what we've been conditioned to do. When you eat, quote, out of control or beyond comfort in the past, what have you done? gone back on a diet. That's what diet culture wants you to do. That's how they thrive. It is a business that thrives on you coming back over and over and over again. So the goal of this podcast today is to tell you kind of what to expect in this honeymoon phase as you start your journey to intuitive eating, why it happens, because I think just knowing why, at least for people that are, sort of processors like myself, it really normalizes it and makes it tolerable when you know there's a reason. And I'm going to give you some ideas and strategies how to handle it so you can keep going. Because the most important thing to do is keep going. Keep going. Trust the process. Know that health, trusting your body is always going to be right. Your body will always give you the right answer. And when you have those moments of panic, fear, doubt, lean into that trust so you can keep going. This is the problem with diet culture. Diet culture, and we've talked about that many, many times on this podcast, I'm not talking about a diet, brand, trademark diet would be in diet culture. But what I'm talking about is the larger set of cultural beliefs that, weight is equal to health, that we should be pursuing smallness, weight loss is the epitome of a perfect life, and all that sort of, baloney. Diet culture, when I say that, the mentality of diet culture is entirely composed of rules, guidelines, very clear boundaries, really line in the sand, kind of yes-no thinking. That's how it operates. And you know that. They give you a list of rules. They give you a list of good food and bad food. They give you hours of the day you can eat, the amounts we're weighing ourselves, measuring ourselves, weighing the food, like all this counting stuff. Makes it very objective and very calculated. But here's the thing. Some of us really come to a place where we like it because it's predictable. It is miserable. It is isolating. It's expensive. It's oppressive, but we find safety in the predictability of it. And that's how we get stuck for years and years and decades. The human brain thrives on security and safety. All right, we know that. We've talked about that before. That's a reptilian brain instinctual response. This is how we have not gone extinct as a species. We always are looking for threats in our environment and avoiding them best we can, and trying to stay safe, stay secure, stay comfortable in a sense. So when we diet and diet and diet for years and years and years, we know we're suffering as we go through it. We know it. When you're saying no to the, social events because you, quote, can't. We know that we don't like this food. We know that we're trying to distract ourselves when we're hungry and all we really want to do is eat. We know that our view of other people changes, and our judgment of what they're eating and what their body looks like is all colored by this diet culture. But even though we suffer really greatly in this mindset, we have some sort of masochistic relationship where we come to like, or at very least, we expect diet culture rules to be safe for us. But the problem with diet culture is the same problems we've talked about a million times on here. The pursuit of weight loss and this restrictive eating is extremely stressful. It has adverse effects on our physical, mental, emotional, social health. There is buku truckload tons of research to support all of those statements. We pour a very, very large, and I would add unnecessary, sink of our personal resources in time, energy, and money into someone else telling us how to eat when your body knows how to do it the whole time for free. We are distracted from knowing ourselves. Diet culture makes body image and nutrition an external experience, and it really steals our autonomy and our sovereignty over our decisions. Diet culture is a system that neglects all social determinants of health and totally undermines body diversity, cultural preferences, and generally the human condition. And it's bad. If you've listened to this podcast even intermittently, or if you've just listened now for the few minutes we've been on here, you don't need me to keep convincing you. Diet culture is not helping us, and I would go so far as to say it's harmful, 999 out of 1,000 times, maybe more than that. And if you don't want to believe what I'm saying, you can believe your own experience. I know every single one of you listening has dieted or participated in diet culture or diet rules. And most of you, many of you have done this for years. But let's just, back up a step and get the, 30,000 foot bird's eye view that if even one of these diet plans, programs, supplements, apps, etc. worked, delivered results, improved our health, was enjoyable and sustainable, would we not already be doing it? We would already be doing it. We'd be doing it. We would have already signed up for the plan and given them our Visa card number in 1984, and it would be over by now. The fact that there are so many things on the market, that there is so much noise in this space, is the evidence you're looking for to tell you that diets don't work. Okay, so let's get back to this issue of the honeymoon phase, this initial period of time when you stop dieting, and it is like the security blanket getting taken away from you, like the rug being pulled out from under you. The cage door is finally opened and the blinders are taken off. And as awesome as that sounds, this sudden lack of restriction and rules can be very scary. And I have many people who talk to me at this point, and this is where they realize that they need help and that they can't do this transformation by themselves. But I want to explain 3 things: why this happens and how it, why it matters, why it happens, and why it matters that we endure it and navigate it. And I'm going to give you some tips how to handle it so that you don't immediately give up and go back to dieting as soon as you dip your toe into intuitive eating and feel this fear. So, why this, I'm going to keep calling it honeymoon phase. That's just sort of a term that in this professional space others have used. It really refers to this period of, quote, overeating, eating past fullness, eating to discomfort, eating less nutrient dense foods, or as you might have called in diet life, junk foods. This is why it happens. Okay, there is, if you think of this like a pendulum, and on one side of the pendulum is restriction from food, and the other side is total lack of abandon, like overeating indulgence, all right? When you have been pulling the pendulum back towards the restriction over and over, and then you let go of it, you know what happens to pendulums. They don't just come to the center point and stop. They swing past center the other direction. And, there's not a trust level with your body that food is going to be available. Because the truth is, over time, when you continue to restrict foods and food groups and energy intake and all those things, your body doesn't know the difference, okay? Your body does not know the difference between a famine or, an eating disorder or a health plan. It it just knows what's coming in. It sees molecules and macronutrients, and your cells are programmed to utilize them in certain ways. It's not, your body, the physical body is not thinking about you dieting. It's thinking that there's no food available. So when you step out of this scarcity and suddenly everything is available, you do have a tendency to eat a lot of the things that you are restricting. I don't know any other way to say that. An analogy that I've heard other people make that I think is really clear is, if you go swim a lap of your swimming pool underwater the whole time, you take a huge breath, go underwater, swim. And when you get to the other side at the wall and you pop up, you take a big breath to refill your lungs. You don't take just a normal size breath because you're making up for this deficit or for this restriction that happened. And that's sort of what your body is doing in a physical sense, is that you have restricted for so long. When you finally come up from the water, i.e. come out of dieting, you consume a lot more than you probably would normally because there's this, your compensation is the right word, compensation for the scarcity. All right. But let's go back to the swimming analogy. If you just continue to breathe and stay above water, your breaths go back to normal and your breathing normalizes in just a couple of breaths. If the default was, I took a huge breath and I feel guilty about consuming too much oxygen, I'm going to go back underwater, you can see how that would get you in a pretty bad cycle of staying underwater till you couldn't stand it, popping up, taking a huge breath, going right back underwater. That wouldn't be comfortable. It wouldn't be sustainable. And that's where most of us are with diet culture. And you know this. But, your body needs to be convinced that things will continue to be available, that there's not scarcity in the environment, and that will come with time. The other thing is there's a difference between physical restriction and psychological restriction. And I know I've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. Physical restriction is when you don't allow yourself to have something and you either don't keep it in the house, you don't order it at the restaurant, you don't even go to the restaurant, you don't consume it, okay? There's some sort of physical, barrier to consuming the food. And that is, the easier thing to let go of. When I say let foods be available, go to the store and put the things you like in the cart and bring them home and put them in your pantry. Okay, so you can do that. But if the psychological restriction persists, and what I mean by that is you may consume the food, you may keep the food in the house, you may order the food at the restaurant, but as soon as you're eating it, while you're eating it, you're thinking in your head, I shouldn't do this, I'm not allowed, XYZ is so fattening, or blah, 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 all that stuff. You're still operating in a closed-minded diet culture mindset. All right, that's still the restriction space, even though it's physically with you. If you're not allowing it, truly allowing it psychologically, you haven't done all the work yet. And that's okay. This is, like I said, this is a process. I'm just helping you identify maybe where you're at and where you're stuck so that, I can help you, or you can continue to listen and find the resources you need to work through that. Now, the problem happens with this honeymoon phase that when you feel that chaos and overeating and loss of control, and you take the, quote, big breath like you do at the end of the swimming pool, we have been conditioned to respond to that with more dieting, with more restriction. The problem is you will just end up being stuck there again. And all that does is pull the pendulum further back. So if you envision this pendulum or this swing, you've let go of it, it started going to the other side. And so instead of letting it settle out in the middle, your reflex to it is to grab it, snatch it up, and pull it even further back towards the restriction. You're going to have to go through this whole thing again. Whenever you decide to let go of it, whenever you decide to stop dieting, which you will, because we all do, and we have many, 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 many times, that honeymoon phase, that compensatory phase is still there. There is no way past this except for going through it. None. There's no shortcut. There's no workaround. There's just none. It is as true as the law of physics that makes the pendulum swing the other way. So that being said, I want to normalize that feeling and that period of time where you stop dieting and you may overeat or make different food choices than you would, hope to make. But I want to relieve you of that burden, that it's not just you and your, brokenness or ignorance or stupidity or lack of willpower. That's what the diet culture will tell you, because they want to tell you that so you'll come back and get more diets. That's, like I said, a billion times over, they are thriving on that. But here's what you're going to do, because you can do better. You're going to handle this a different way. And, you can decide if you want to stop dieting now. You can decide if you want to diet forever. You can decide to stop dieting later. But keep these tools in mind, because this is how you're going to be equipped to make that transition the least terrorizing experience possible. The first thing is to know that it's normal. And when you're going through something challenging, this goes for food and without food, is knowing that something is normal, knowing that something is part of the growth process and it will not last forever, relieves a huge burden. All right. So if you hear nothing else, I want you to know that this is normal. You are not broken. Okay. As you do this longer and practice more and get better and better at hearing your intuition about eating, learning what foods feel like in your body, it will get easier. You will allow your brain some space to relax, and your mental health will improve when you can give up this repetitive, obsessive thinking about your body and about the food you're eating. Then you'll be able to get through this. When you start having a little space and grace for yourself, knowing that it's a process, knowing this is part of the process, knowing it's not avoidable. You cannot choose another option if you want to be on the other side. This is a bridge you have to cross. That might give you the sustainability and really the endurance you need to get through this. Another thing is try to, in this period of time, eat a variety of foods. When we say all foods fit and anything is available, yes, that does mean fried chicken and Oreos. It also means fruits and vegetables and nutrient-dense foods. And so when you get better and better at looking at all foods through this lens of neutrality, you can start practicing mindful eating. And what that means is that you really experience what the foods do for you, what they feel like, smell like, taste like, what they feel like in your body. You have this opportunity to reflect on the physical feeling, and when you're let go of the judgment. When you are eating something and your brain is being 99% occupied with judging your food choice, there is no space for that reflection. There is no room to recognize the physical feelings and how food treats your body. And what's really super cool is that even within a single meal or a single snack, a single food item, there is a place between enjoyment, satisfaction, slight discomfort, complete discomfort. All right. And the palatability and the desire for a food actually changes bite to bite to bite. And it happens on a biochemical level in our mouths, in our tongues, and in our brains. And that is super cool. I'm not going to get into the weeds about that, but when you are dieting and you're judging everything you do, you don't have a way to sense that or learn about that because you are eating by the book, as we say. You are, you're actually purposely excluding your own feelings and intuition about it because you need to follow the rules. But when you let go of the rules, you have room for the intuition, room for the mindful eating. And you will be able to tell better and better and better as you do this over and over and over where enjoyment can morph into satisfaction, into discomfort, and beyond. And people are always worried. They tell me that, I'm afraid if I don't have rules and I don't have a diet, I'm going to, eat a dozen donuts every morning and drive through Taco Bell at lunch every single day and order the mega meal or whatever. You know what? You might do that tomorrow. You might. But if you absolve yourself of the judgment and you're really thinking about what your body feels like after eating a dozen donuts and a meal at Taco Bell, you will learn something. And when you can learn in a way that it's neutral and it's not punishing and it's not, derogatory to your own value, that's when you become an intuitive eater and you realize that I really want a taco and Taco Bell is open and I'm allowed to go there, and eating one taco satisfies my need and still feels good in my body. You learn stuff about how you as an individual person can or can't handle certain foods physically. So that's really important. The other thing, like I said before, is this psychological restriction, because this is big. If you physically allow foods, but then you judge yourself, the burden of the food and all this emotional baggage you carry with it, you're not really letting go of anything. And this is very hard because most of us who have lived on diets and eaten on diet plans and diety culture stuff for decades, we've judged every single thing we've done, every bite, every meal for so long that judgment is a subconscious reflex. It's not even a conscious thought or a deliberate judgment. It is just, we have trained ourselves to think this way. But it's important to be open-minded to the idea that you can let that go, that you can exercise the ability to not judge yourself and your choices. What I tell people is that every time you eat, it is a discrete event. It is a meal, it is a snack, it is a food item, whatever it is. But if we can kind of eliminate some of this lead up, build up, all this, feeling and emotion that's like the choices are steeped in, and then we can let go of this hangover effect where we let a choice be judged good or bad, and we let that affect our next choice and how we feel about ourselves. If you can let the eating just be eating, let the food just be food, and let it be a discrete event, it doesn't have power over you anymore. It doesn't have power over you. So really, to summarize, what happens in this honeymoon phase when you start intuitive eating, when you stop diet culture and you feel unsteady, out of control, eating an increased amount of foods that were restricted, overeating past comfort, why that happens is because of the history of restriction. And it is worse the longer you've restricted and the more stricter you've restricted. That was a lot of strictens. But it's a pendulum. You can't stop the pendulum at the middle. We will get to the middle if you just quit touching it and quit pulling it back into diet culture. And if you let it swing a little bit and deal with it, And I've given you some tools, hopefully, that will help you learn how to deal with that. But then eventually, it won't be there forever on the other side. It swings back a little less and swings back a little less. And eventually you get to a stable, steady midpoint, set point, whatever you want to call, where you're serving your body, you're enjoying the food, you feel good when you eat, and it's not consuming all of your energy and all of your resources to do that. How are you going to do that? Well, normalize this honeymoon period. Eat a large variety of foods, try to lean into that mindful eating and think about how you're feeling during and after different food items. And by and large, put your efforts into removing that psychological pressure and restriction and judgment. And this is a process. You are learning. I am learning. We are all learning. Nobody is perfect at this. You're never done practicing this. It's called practice. You practice intuitive eating because you're always learning something new. That's why we practice medicine. That's why you practice playing basketball. Nobody's done. So don't judge yourself that you're not, quote, there or perfect yet. All right. That's diet culture talking, and you don't need to be there. So like I said, it's a process. You have to get through this. Hopefully I have allayed some of your fears and your hesitations and given you some tools to navigate that honeymoon period between diet culture and intuitive eating. But if you're in this place, you're feeling overwhelmed, please get some help. This transformation into becoming an intuitive eater is far more comfortable and far more efficient when you are working in community with other people doing the same thing. So I would like to offer my help. Thank you for listening today. I am going to be starting a new cohort of my group coaching program, probably in July. I haven't set the date yet, but the link will be in the show notes. And if you would like to get on my wait list for my signature group coaching program, where we dig into all of these things and you get lots of feedback from me and lots of support from the community, I will definitely let the people on the wait list know first when I set the dates and get information about enrollment out to you. So I appreciate you being here. The show notes will have all the details, and I hope you return next week. Every Wednesday, new episode to learn more about the undieted approach to eating. Until next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.